everyone, I'm Arlene Dickinson. Thanks for joining me on my podcast.
It's no secret that small business is a big deal for TELUS. Earlier this year, TELUS helped make things better for small businesses through their pledge to stand with owners. In continuing their support for owners across Canada, they are excited to introduce the Owner's Advantage Plan, an exclusive mobility plan tailored to help business owners stay connected to their family, business, and community. The Owner's Advantage Plan offers a wide variety of benefits designed to provide greater value and more flexibility than ever before, including yearly device upgrades, endless data, same-day device repair, and access to on-demand virtual healthcare, all on the world's fastest mobile network in the world. Visit telus.com/ownersadvantage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Reinvention. Today, Arlene chats with platinum-selling singer-songwriter Serena Ryder. From humble beginnings to international stardom, Serena is the inspiration for so many of us, both through her music and through her advocacy for mental health. The rise to the top is the dream for any artist, but for many of them, they'll tell you it's bittersweet. Despite her ability to affect those around her positively, Serena was constantly dealing with overwhelming pressure. An identity crisis coupled with clinical depression led her and her friends towards the realization that a change needed to happen. It was then that she got the professional help she needed and began feeling like her true self again. Her reinvention towards health truly is the art of falling apart.
So Serena, I have watched you from afar and have been such a fan of you for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, from your small town beginnings through kind of your journey in the industry to now being such a huge advocate for mental health and to kind of your own journey of what you've gone through. It's really inspiring. And I saw you play live. You won't know this, but you were playing in Toronto. I think it was for a company's event that they held outside, and you were on the stage. I want to say it might have been actually in Montreal. It was somewhere in Canada. Yeah. It was a big city in Canada. It was for Toyota.
Okay.
And you were playing there on the stage, and you were so. Your energy was electric. Like I remember thinking she has so much courage. I just couldn't do what you do. And I would really love it if you could talk a little bit about your journey. And I know your journey is complex and you've gone through a lot, but maybe just start, if you would, kind of how where you started in this very small town and how you kind of evolved to getting to a music career. And then maybe we can pause and talk about, how you then reinvented yourself through, a mental health crisis that you faced and how you dealt with that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Toronto, but I moved from here when I was 3.5 years old. And I grew up in Millbrook, Ontario. So it's a small village in a valley. When I grew up there, it was under 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful little town, but it's like, I was obsessed with music pretty much right away. Like the first time I was on a stage was when I was 2 years old.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. Like I got up on stage at my sister-in-law's wedding reception and sang the only 2 words I knew to Beat It, which were Beat It. I still have a picture of it. And I was always into music, so I was always playing. And my first manager was the only taxi cab driver in Millbrook. His name is Ernie Doig, and he got me my first gig, which was downtown Millbrook at the Legion. And I played these oldies because I used to listen to oldies with my dad all the time. So I sang like Buddy Holly, Linda Ronstadt, that kind of stuff. And it just started from there, like first gig at 8. And then I started playing coffee houses all over the place. I got my first guitar when I was 13. And there wasn't a time nor a place where I wasn't constantly, obsessed with music and playing. And it was my medicine for sure from an early age. Like I remember the first time that I heard Leonard Cohen when I was 12 years old from my parents' records and being like, whoa, he is putting into words these things that I'm going through inside of myself. And I would lock myself in my room and just listen to records. And yeah, it's it's so funny because it's like I've been touring for 20 years now. I started touring when I was 17, 21 years. I'm 38. And the journey has been, pretty epic. I feel like I've lived a whole bunch of different lives. And my mental health journey started very young. When I was 13, I was so sad. I was so depressed. And I didn't really know what it was. And I didn't really put a name to it. I just, people kind of said, oh, it's hormones, or it's changing, and, teenagers these days. But it was something that never really quite lifted. And the only thing that really lifted it was music. When I would play and sing, and I was like, okay, this is medicine that, is healing me, but also something that's going to heal other people. And that's kind of when I realized that's what I wanted to do. And the reason I wanted to do it was because it is medicine. And to this day, that's the reason why I do what I do. But with the lifestyle that I led, being a touring musician is super intense. And for anybody, it's intense. Like, you're going to different towns and cities and sleeping in a different bed every night, if you get to sleep, because, your schedule is always so intense. And the expectations that are put on you are pretty intense too. And being, the only woman usually on tour was pretty epic for me as well. Like, where I didn't really feel, I felt like I had to become hard. I felt like I had to become like a badass bitch, like I had to be like just such a badass rocker chick to be safe, right?
Yeah,
to be safe on tour, to be able to walk from like the alleyway of a venue to, the hotel or to the tour bus or whatever. And I feel like, so much of that time I pushed down what I was feeling, because feelings were, emotions were seen as a weakness at the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like so many of us women experience that, where, we've had to make ourselves tough in a certain way that is not intuitive. It's not intuitive to anybody, woman, man, non-binary, human, like whatever. It's like, emotions are our guidance system, and I feel like they are our true guidance system, and they tell us, what we need to hear.
So if you just go back for a second, when you're talking about, and I don't want to interrupt the story, but I do want to just pause for a second because when you said you were sad at 13 and you were feeling this depression, was your home life a part of that? Were you growing up in circumstances that created, or was it just something that just happened to you?
Yeah, I think that there's so many levels to it. And there's so many levels to it for everybody. My family, my mom, where my mom had come from, where she was, she was left the day she was born, and she was found, by her aunt the day she was born, and raised by another family, and never knew where she came from. And, she had a very, very hard life, very traumatic life. And, she also became super tough, right? She became super tough and was like, that whole idea of like a strong, powerful woman, it's amazing, but it's also like, you deny yourself a lot of the emotions and the feelings that you're going through. And she's one of the most epically amazing human beings that I know, but she's been through so much. Same with my dad that raised me. He's had so much trauma in his life, and that absolutely affects and affected, me and where I go and what I've learned, in my life. But then also I think there's like, people have this this idea that there's like nature and nurture, but I feel like it's so much bullshit, because it's like eugenics, right? Like it's not, it's a thing that was like, you know, invented to fit people in a box, and mostly like, you know, everybody other than like white people in a box, where we get to choose like, you know, where our path is and stuff. But I feel like there's so many layers to why I was depressed when I was 13. And even looking back, it's like, I don't know that I'll ever know the reasons fully. But I know that it wasn't for naught. It wasn't just like a genetic thing, or, you know, something that happened to me in my life. Yeah.
I think that's really profound in a whole bunch of ways, because we tend to want to blame our past for why we can't change into our future. You know, we tend to say, I'm either was born this way, or, you know, I was raised this way, or it's my parents' fault, or it's you know, we can persevere on negativity. We can think about what was wrong, and then we can say, well, that means that we can't possibly be happy into the future. And I think you're right. It is a narrative we tell ourselves as individuals, that something must have happened that made you unhappy. Well, no, maybe it was, as you said, it was many things. It was a combination of things. It was, you know, it's not one specific event that drives, you know, depression or sadness. I mean, it can happen for a variety of reasons, and I've certainly experienced it. And then maybe if I think back to when I was 13, my parents were getting divorced when I was 13. And I do remember, I just remember confusion and unhappiness, but I really don't, it wasn't because simply they were getting divorced. It was just, so, like you said, so many things. So that is a very fragile time of our lives at that age as well, right? There's so much going on. And our brains are just forming and thinking, and we're starting to understand. And I think we're more vulnerable to everything.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I feel like, you know, looking back, and even just how I experience life now, it's like, you know, you're saying you went through periods of time when you were depressed and you were sad. And it's like, those moments need to happen on a regular basis, you know, in order for balance to happen, I believe, you know. And I believe that those moments of like really intense and severe mental, you know, health crises and depression and things like that, I believe that they happen after long periods of time of denying yourself feelings in the moment, emotion, right? Completely. Like, that's what my whole you know, new album is about. That's what my, you know, I've been doing a keynote speech, mental wellness keynote speech. It's like, it's all about allowing yourself, you know, to really let out what you're feeling in the moment, rather than, you know, pushing it down or self-medicating.
So your new album and your speeches are around the art of falling apart, which in and of itself, I love that title, because, you know, like you say, it is something, you know, if you can manage through it, it's not science. It's an art of helping yourself through it. And we're all going to deal differently too. Just go back for a minute though. So you're touring, and I love what you said about how you had to be a tough bitch. You had to be this, you know, you had to walk down the alleys and worry about, you know, protecting yourself, and you couldn't show a feminine side to yourself, and you couldn't be soft, because not only for your safety and security, but I think probably professionally, that you had to feel like you needed to be in control of what everyone was trying to do to your career too. Like, you must have felt overwhelmed with all the managers and the people trying to tell you what to do all the time and where to be. And then, like you say, life on the road. I've talked to several musicians. Life on the road is a shit show. I don't think I could do it. Like, I don't even know how you did it. Like, it sounds so romantic till you watch somebody and they tell you about it. It sounds horrible. So how did you deal with it? How did you deal with you're getting hard, you're trying to portray hardness, you're feeling sadness, you're on stage, you're performing, you have to show up. How did you reconcile the different Serenas? How did you reconcile that?
Yeah, I did a lot of what's it called when you put things in different
Compartmentalize?
compartmentalized things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like the queen of compartmentalization. And also it wasn't like I felt like I had to fight other people and their opinions. It was almost like I believed them, and I feel like that led to a lot of falling apart for me, because my first check-in was not here. My first check-in was like there, all these people, like my A&R guy or my manager are like, you tell me how I'm doing, and that really really made a lot of falling apart happen.
Was that because you were looking for that's okay. Is that because you were looking for the validation? Were you looking for?
I think I was looking for other people to tell me that I was okay.
Yeah.
And
you weren't feeling okay.
Then I knew that I had a gift, and I knew that I wanted to share it, and I knew that I wanted to be successful doing it, but I didn't quite believe myself. And I don't feel like, I felt like I spent the first 15 years of my career, or first 10 years at least, just trying to believe myself. Like,
do you now?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So your first check-in now is with yourself, always?
Yeah, my first check-in is with myself. I believe that, I know it to be true that, mental health just means trusting yourself. That's all it means. That's all it means to me. Because when I trust myself, then I feel a sense of safety, and other people's opinions of me don't matter,
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that it good for you for finding that at the age you are, because that took me a long time. It took me a long time to rewrite the story in the script in my head that said, I wasn't okay unless everybody else thought I was okay.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
It is hard, it's a daily thing.
You were validated. I'm just kind of looking at some of the things your career is astounding, and I, it was like I was going back, and let's see, starting back with 17, 18, you leave home, right, for Peterborough.
Yeah.
Right. Early 1998, you have a record produced.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you did a bunch of live concerts. You did a lot of stuff there. You were playing your first show at the Black Sheep Inn in Wakefield, Quebec.
Right. Yeah.
What happened then? Tell me about that.
The Black Sheep Inn was actually one of my favorite places to play, and it wasn't my first show, but it was my first live recording that I did for CBC, and it was such a magical place for me, because I felt at home, on that stage more than any other place. And Paul Symes, who runs the Black Sheep Inn, is a huge music fan, and really a musicologist. Like, he knows so much about everything, and there was an excitement there that really kind of gave me the inspiration for the rest of my career. I was obsessed with going there. I would go there anytime that I could, and I'd stay by myself at the inn, which was like hadn't been changed. Like the beds and the decorations and stuff. It's since like the 30s or the 40s. Like, yeah. This is like old haunted place. Have you been there before?
No, I want to go now.
Oh yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I hope that they haven't changed it, but I mean, it's possible they've renovated since.
maybe not.
Maybe not, but yeah, that Black Sheep Inn was epic for me, for sure.
And you recorded your first live album from there that CBC picked up, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
you then, I mean, again, you go, there's so much. I don't think we have time to go through everything you've done. I mean, you've toured with Melissa Etheridge across Canada.
Yeah.
You were in Little Affair with Sarah Bareilles, who I love, so many fantastic artists. And then in 2011, you did your 5th album, Harmony. And what happened in your life in 2011? Talk a little bit about what was going on with you that started that album called Harmony.
Yeah, sure. So Harmony was my first album that I openly spoke about my, journey through depression, through the woods of really clinical depression. And at the time, not a lot of people were talking about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really, really stigmatized at the time. And before I made that record, I'd been touring pretty much nonstop. I was touring like 9 months a year, pretty much, like fully.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted and I got really burnt out, and I kept wanting it to be, I wanted things to be good and perfect, all of the time. And it's like when you, like I was going to say before, it's like when you're denying yourself the seasons of your life, right? Like the winter has to come, you have to have down times in order for, the different seasons to happen. And I was not into that at that time. Like I just wanted everything to be, bright sunshine all of the time. And I crashed and burned, and I was exhausted, and I ended up searching for people who could help me. I was looking for answers everywhere, doctors, therapists, healers. And I just kind of dug myself into the ground, looking for answers, and just kind of gave up. And I had never experienced a sadness quite this deep. This was my first time being clinically depressed, and I couldn't leave the bedroom for 3 months. 3 months of like,
crazy,
3 months of night sweats, but not at night, like just all the time. It looked like you'd thrown a bucket of water on my bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only thing that I could do was, the only thing I had energy to do was watch Netflix. So I think I watched The L Word in like under a month, like all of it.
All of it.
All of it. It was awesome. But yeah, like I really, really, really fell apart, and I didn't have a choice at that time because I had pushed it down for so many years, and that's what happened. And once I had really just kind of surrendered to it and was like, I'm going to be okay. Right now, I'm not okay. And that's okay. And that sounds, I think there's a book like I'm not okay and that's okay or something, but it was, it was real. And I didn't know that I would ever be myself again. And so when I started to feel like myself again, it was so nourishing and so exciting. And I at the time was living with my womanager, Sandy, who's amazing. She's been my womanager for 20 years now, and she's family. She's amazing. But I was living with her, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready to get my own place, and I'm ready to start looking. And I got my own place, and little by little, I started going for walks. I started, choosing to eat nourishing foods, and I fell in love, and this album just poured out of me. And I think there was so much gratitude in the record, because I didn't know if I'd ever be me again,
Yeah.
and then I became myself again, or found myself again, because it was just really pushed down. And then, yeah, Harmony came, and I just was so grateful. And I wrote love songs, and I wrote songs about where I had been, but not diving too deep into it because it was really close,
Mm-hmm.
where I had been as well. And that was it felt very much like kind of my coming out record,
Right.
Where
you finally admitted to the world that you had these struggles and that was who you were and that you had gone through all those things. I mean, it is because of people like you and women like you who had the courage. I mean, that was 10 years ago. Like you said, the stigma was real and big back then.
Huge.
Still is today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's because of, albums like Harmony where you actually started to express those things. I think you changed other people's lives. I mean, do you get feedback like that from people often where they just say, thank you, the music actually meant something?
Yeah, I do. And that means the most, it's like,
yeah.
I do get people reaching out to me and saying thank you. And, I've reached a point in my life where I can say you're welcome now, which is really nice. When you get to that point,
yeah,
you are so welcome. You spend so many years like, oh, no, like, it was my pleasure. No, it's okay. Like, you're great too. It's like, no.
Yeah.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. Because you can imagine if that had been somebody doing it for you, right? Like at that time, if somebody had just done that for you, it would have made a difference.
Huge difference. And I feel like that's the thing that that really sparked the knowing that talking about these things is the most important thing. Because when I was in it, I felt like there's no possible way anyone could ever know what I was going through or felt the same way,
When, I had somebody ask me the other day that, and it said something to me the other day about, people look at, you've led such a charmed life. And it just stopped me, Serena, because I thought, man, I have not led a charmed life. I've had a lot of really shitty things happen to me in my life. And it's not to say I'm not super grateful where I am.
Yeah.
I am. But man, charmed is not a word I would have used to describe it. I would have used, like a hard life in some respects and a challenging life and certainly a full life, but I would never say a charmed life. People must look at you and look at all the albums you've done and the songwriting and your career. And I mean, what you did with, Gord Downey and all of the things that you've done, which are big things. And they must go, oh, she's just had it. So even though you write about depression, you still, you lead a charmed life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I completely, like, I just laughed when you said that. Someone said that to you. I was like,
no, not so charmed.
It's, I feel like, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, it's like, with all of the blessings, there's always the balance of the other side.
Yeah.
There's always that balance of the other side. If it's something that you have been able to make a consistent, like have a consistent career and something that's gone long-term, success, whatever that means to you, is like those successes have always been equally balanced by some real fucked up shit that's gone on, and I completely agree with that. And for me, it's like I've faced my greatest fear, my greatest fear my whole life has been losing my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And before I did this record 3 years ago, I had a complete, I guess it was called a psychotic break, where I was in CAMH in a room with doctors looking in through these windows at me. I lost all sovereignty, and I didn't know who I was, and like, because of that, I now know so much more clearly who I am, and I lost it. I lost who I was because of, and these lessons that you learn, it's like, they're not something that comes in, fixes something, and then you move to the next thing. These are like lifelong lessons. Mm-hmm. You don't just go, oh, now I'm fixed.
Yeah, because
And
you're never really fixed. You're just always constantly in the battle, right?
you're never fixed because you were never broken,
Yeah.
you know? And like, that was such a profound thing for me to realize, and it's like, it's going to be a constant journey until the day I die. I don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what's going to happen next.
No.
But you know that you have control over how you react to what happens next, and that's been huge for me.
When you were in line, and the first time that this really happened prior to Harmony, and you're lying in bed for 3 months and you're depressed, you're clinically depressed. How did you work your way out of that, Serena? Because I think people listening to this will be going, but how? How do you stay in control of yourself? How did you, clinical depression needs treatment. So how did you get through that?
Well, at the beginning, I was fighting so hard. I was fighting to get better, and that made me worse. This is my own, experience and journey in clinical depression. But I was fighting. I got to get better. I got to get well. I was pushing myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to make myself go for a walk. I'm going to do all of these things. That didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. I remember the day that I decided to let myself be sad, be in despair, and just be, because I had tried so many things before it where it was like, I need to surrender. I need to surrender to this because I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And I remember the day that I chose to surrender was the day that I started feeling better. And I know a lot of people who are in it, people who are in the depression or in a really dark place, that's not going to help them, me saying that, because it's like, it's the scariest thing, and everybody's path is different. I've done years of therapy. I've been in therapy since I was 17 years old. I've probably had 17 different therapists. Yeah. And trying to figure out who I was and how I needed to fix myself. But
So 3 years ago when you slipped back into depression and you ended up in CAMH, did you feel yourself slipping back in? Did you know it was happening, or did it happen quickly for you?
Well, I didn't slip into depression. It's kind of the most long story ever, but okay. So since Harmony, that was the first time that I took medication when I was clinically depressed, and I took it for like 2 months, antidepressants, and then I weaned off of them, and then I didn't take medication again for another like 4 years or something. And when I started to experience a lot of anxiety, and so I started taking anti-anxiety medication, which was also antipsychotic medication.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm not even going to say names, but it was a specific one. And I kind of flatlined emotionally. And I was working with a really beautiful doctor who, was there to help me. And I just really wanted to get off of the medication. And I was advised not to. And I did anyways. And I did it really fast. Okay. So, and I thought it was slow. I thought I went off of it pretty slow. I did it over the course of 3 months where I weaned off. And after I weaned off, because I was on and off of medication a few times, but after I weaned off myself for like 3 months, I started to feel like myself again. And I started to feel great. And then I started to feel really great. And then I started to feel like I was like epically high all of the time. So I became manic. And the people in my life around me were really scared, because I've always been a really spiritual person. I've always been, very connected to knowing that there's more than this, which is actually quite amazing in itself anyways.
Yeah.
But I was just flying and I was high all of the time. And, clinically it was a manic episode. Mm-hmm. And my two people that were really close to me took me to see my doctor, and she made me go to the hospital. And it was after about 2 or 3 months of like just being like my eyes were like this all of the time. I was like, what are you doing? I can see in your soul, like that kind of shit. But that had never happened to me when I wasn't on medication. So my experience with it was I went off of that medication, which had changed my brain chemistry way too fast. And my body was like pulling the opposite. And so what I ended up doing was I went back on medication and I weaned myself off over the course of 1.5 years.
Okay.
And this is very key because a lot of people who are on medication, when they go off, their symptoms go crazy. And then their doctors are like, see, you can never go off of that. That's, you're sick. This is your symptoms. But a lot of the time it's like, it's screwed up your brain chemistry so much that it's because of that you're going to the opposite end. So for me, it was 1.5 years and I weaned off of my meds, and I wasn't on that many, but I weaned off of them at 10% intervals,
Yeah.
And
it's brave. It's brave that you did that, because you would have probably worried about having another episode and figuring out that you could go back to where you weren't in a healthy mental state, right? So that would have been scary, but like you say, maybe more scary to have stayed on if it wasn't what you wanted to do for the long term.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't something that I felt served me for like the rest of my life, which would have been the case. But I had to, in order to be mentally well, I have to be so healthy now, where it's like all of my choices matter. And one of the biggest choices that has changed my entire life, and the reason why I don't experience those gigantic highs and lows anymore, is I've stopped drinking. Mm-hmm. I've been sober for 2.5 years now.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome.
For the first time in my life since I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been life-changing.
It's funny how, we all, to your point earlier about how different we all are and how we all experience things in our own way, and our circumstances are just a piece of our complexity. Mm-hmm. Little things can make such a huge difference in anybody's health journey. And mentally, I think this is something we all forget. I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs, and they were saying, what's the advice you have for us? And I'd say, pay attention to your physical and mental health, because those two things are so interconnected. They're so connected in ways that we don't even begin to understand, from what we consume and to our exercise, but to as simple as, are you drinking enough water? These little things actually do make a difference. Our brain survives because, it's housed in this thing that's called our body, and we have to keep them both healthy. Mm-hmm. When you just going fast forwarding a bit, the art of falling apart. Tell me, you're talking about it. You've got a new album coming out. Tell me what you hope to accomplish. What's the message you're trying to give now to people as you're at this stage of your life? You've had a stellar career.
Yeah. So the message behind the art of falling apart is to trust your emotions and allow them to come out when they're there, because they are so wise, and like you were just saying, your mental health and your physical health are the same thing. They're completely, connected, and all the wisdom that you need is in your body and in your mind, for your life. And so the art of falling apart is, I actually wasn't even planning on making a new record, to be honest, Arlene. I was like doing my wellness speeches. I was going, okay, I'm going to take a little break for a few years and maybe not tour for a while, but I guess I got that. I got that
How's
wish.
that going? How's that going for you? Not so good.
Yeah, I guess I got that wish and I didn't even have to try for that. But I was like, I was doing my keynote speech and I had just finished doing my first one and I was on my way to some writing sessions with some dear friends of mine. And I was like, this is the only thing I can think about. This is all I want to talk about. And this is, I was saying Harmony was my kind of coming out album. This is my like tell-all album where I feel so comfortable sharing the details of my story now because not that I'm on the other side of it, but because I know that being where I am is such a profound gift, and The Art of Falling Apart, it's 10 songs. It was 10 days. And the order of the songs on the record is the order that we wrote them in. And there are all these different steps that I took in my mental wellness journey. So like track 1 is day 1. It's called Candy. It's about being vulnerable and like looking and not that like hashtag vulnerable, but the like messy, real, vulnerable, look on the inside. And like track 2 is called Waterfall. It's about crying and the importance of tears and how healing they are. And, it goes through all of them right now. Like track 6 is called Better Now. And it's about my choice to take care of myself and to not drink anymore and how I've learned to love myself and therefore, or how I've learned to take care of myself in the moments, and that's allowed me to really be present for the people that I love in my life too. It's an album that I made for myself because I wasn't planning on being a touring rock star for a little while, I was like, but it's I had the most fun doing that I've had on any record. It's the first album that I've done that there's no tuning at all on my voice. There's, it's very raw and like there was a lot of like deep stories told when I was writing the record and a lot of like laying on the floor crying while I'm singing like the demos.
I love that though. I mean, you're being compared to a teenage Aretha Franklin, and while that's a huge compliment, it's not enough of a compliment because you are your own voice and you have your storytelling is I can't even imagine how many people you're going to touch with this album. Like I think people are going to listen to that and they're going to feel the tears and they're going to think, that's how I feel right now. And it's okay for me to cry. It's okay for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to get better. All of the things, these steps that you're talking about, the beauty of what you're sharing, Serena, is just it's profound and you should be really proud of that. Like it's not easy to do.
Yeah, I know I am very proud and
yeah.
I'm also like, I made this record and it's like, now that it's on the outside too, where it's like, whoa, this is what I'm going to be talking about.
Yeah.
So, it's even given me the opportunity to be like, I need to be as healthy as I possibly can while I'm talking about all of these things. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And even in some of the interviews that I've been doing, it's like, I've cried.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not only okay to cry, it's good.
It's necessary. I think I'm actually not crying right now, but I do, but I could cry. I mean, I listen to you and it makes me want to. I'm a big crier and I have no problem crying. Sometimes I'll apologize because just the moment is, and I go, why am I apologizing? It's absolutely nothing wrong with feeling emotion, and I love that you could sing through that emotion, and I love that you are sharing that. Just the entire vulnerability of what you've talked about. I can't, when you think about what's next, I mean, who knows what's next, right? People, I say, what's next? Well, who knows what's next? Who knows what you're going to write next or feel next, and what beautiful music is going to come out of that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's really all about, I want to, my goal for the last few years, my dream is to start a mental wellness foundation. And I started my own label with my manager called Art House Music. And
Congrats.
thank you very much. And a recording studio, which is amazing. And we work with a lot of awesome artists and awesome youth. And we also do wellness programs through Art House. So at the very beginning of COVID, because we had been talking about it for a while, we're like, okay, this needs to happen now, because mental health, there's a huge mental health crisis now more than ever because of COVID. And so we made these programs accessible. They're completely free. We've done 11 of them so far.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're online. They're like an hour and a half, 4-week programs for different groups of people. Like we have ones just for LGBTQ plus two-spirited people. We have ones just for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We have ones that are done by different kinds of counselors and different kinds of doctors. So it can be, and it's more about helping people find their truth and their inner voice and not telling them, what to do to get better. It's really about helping people, figure out their own
Who they are.
Yeah. So that is something that I know I will be doing for years and years to come,
And what's really inspiring about that is that I work with creative people all the time, and creative people, I believe artists in general are some of the most misunderstood humans around, because they rarely conform to whatever this stupid notion of normal is, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's because you do experience things in your own unique ways. You do express them. I always say to people when I work with great creative geniuses, is that it's like giving birth to a baby all the time and saying, hey, what do you think of my baby? And
it's true, and it's so fucking painful.
Yeah, so painful.
It's like, and then you also feel like an ass for even talking about it that way. It's like, but it's like, no, it is like, it really is. And it's heartbreaking when, like I know this, like when I share a song that I've just written and it's like, yeah, it's like,
yeah, what?
I almost don't want to share them sometimes.
Exactly, because I think the cycle of creativity is, this is awesome. I think I posted a meme on this at one point. This is awesome. This is hard. This is shit. I'm shit. This is okay. This is okay. This is awesome again. You kind of go through this whole journey of I can do it. I can't do it. I'm going to do it. It's great. It's never good enough. And so I feel like what you're doing to support that community, all that to say, Serena, is that what you're doing relative to supporting the community and helping people feel okay with who they are, not trying to be something that somebody else expects them to be, is really where equality stems from. And this notion of equality that we talk about, and we just came off of International Women's Week, and people talking about equality, and to me, equality isn't about a gender. It's about a human condition. It's about treating everybody equally, no matter who they are, no matter how they identify, no matter what their nuances are in terms of how they express themselves. And that's the world that I think you're trying to help create. And I love you for that, and I really appreciate you for that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I love that you said you're welcome. See, you just finished telling me that. So is there anything you want to say kind of to the listeners around reinventing yourself as you go through all these highs and lows of life?
Well, I just feel like if we treated ourselves more like a mystery, if we treated ourselves more like, we have so much to discover instead of trying to figure out the set in stone answers, I feel like life would be so much more intriguing and nourishing, and that there's probably a lot that we don't know about ourselves. And, it's fun to just sit in a place of not knowing and discover, because that's really where creativity stems for me, is in the listening, and that our bodies and our emotions tell us all of the things that we'll ever need to know. Yeah.
Yeah, finding the courage to be you. Serena, you're fabulous. For our listeners, download her new album, The Art of Falling Apart. It's stunningly beautiful and hauntingly meaningful. And thank you for spending an hour of your time with me. I know you're super busy, and it was wonderful to talk.
It was wonderful. Thank you too.
You're never fixed because you're never broken. Words that resonate with Serena after all that she's been through. From the highs of releasing chart-topping music to the lows of being assessed by doctors in a psychiatric ward, it's all a journey. And we all face obstacles. And while some of us can keep moving through, others need to pause and rejuvenate. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's life. Getting the support you need to bounce back is what matters most. And if that takes 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years, it's worth it. For Serena, this resulted in her picking up her guitar again and writing music, which turned into her latest album, The Art of Falling Apart. Stay safe and stay human. Thanks for listening, everybody.
This podcast is made possible by the great folks at Venture Communications. Thanks to our engineers, writers, producers, and all the folks who work really hard to bring you these great stories of reinventions each and every week.